Hello, everybody, and as promised, I am making a video on Jamboards. If you're not familiar with what Jamboards are, or what a Jamboard is, it's a tool that is free with Google. It is basically like a whiteboard that you can share with other people. Now you can click the share button, you can grant people view access or edit access depending on what you want to do. And eventually, I am going to explore some options like that. However, the security mindset is, t- um, they sometimes refer to it as spidey senses tingling. But anytime that you're sharing information with other people, you need to make sure that you're not sharing too much information. Like all you can see from this screen is a bunch of tabs, an A in a circle. So, A-Rye being me. And this is actually my social media account. So everything tied to this is meant to be public facing. Like there's no personally identifying information in this account. But I mean, and I've said this before in many videos, open source intelligence it's just a fact of the thing. If you have a social media account, I mean, up until recently, Facebook changed it to where you could have um, private accounts. Before that, it was Stalker Central. So, anyways, I digress. Back to the Jamboards. These are a few of my main projects going on. And actually, these aren't even all of them. Like, I'm just getting started. In fact, let me go ahead and just pull up another one. Oops. Oh, yep. So, yeah, there's. I'll see if I can maybe cut that out. But, anyways, if you open up Jamboards, you'll see all of the Jamboards I've been working on. Like, yeah, I've got everything from parental help, where I want to start putting out tips for parenting guides. I'm not, how do I put this? I'm not the best parent out there. I have my flaws, but I do have kids and they've survived almost a decade. So, I mean, I'm just kidding. They're thriving. They're doing great. My son's already learning division and they're both programming, and, my daughter's short behind him. So it's like, I do know a bit about parenting. Now, over here, we've got IT troubleshooting tips, and that's where I'm putting like everything that I can think of that would be helpful when doing an IT job, and really even just doing IT yourself, because the more involved we get with tech, in fact, let's go ahead and open that up. Now, let's see. So yeah, break it down to software or logical, and I might even make, or no, did I make separate cars? Okay, yeah, sorry, software slash logical. In the beginning, sorry, to explain that, I had all of this on one card, and then I realized you could make two cards or three cards. So I just created a third one, and you can click this, and you can delete them. Whatever you want to do. It's super easy to make, like basically almost like a PowerPoint slideshow, but at the same time, just have like a whiteboard. I mean, anybody who's worked in the professional industry knows that there's generally a whiteboard in every office, and you kind of a whiteboard or something similar. So, and more and more businesses are moving towards the remote model, and so tools like this are increasingly important. So you can collaborate with other people. I mean, if there were other people in this, you'd see their avatars in here. Um, and you'd probably see, like, if I clicked somewhere, it would show like my cursor's now on highlighting this thing, and so somebody could actually watch me like as I build one of these or something. But anyways, let's look a little closer at some of these. So yeah, this is your IT troubleshooting. So whether it's software slash logical, and by that I mean if the problem exists in the non-hardware. And so I kind of got to say that because it could be in a wide range of things. Like in further instance, we've got, is the user logged in? So if the user is not logged in, there might be resources that aren't available, especially some that might not seem so straightforward, that they're not available unless you're logged in. And especially like people who use Google a lot, if you're not logged in fact, I'm logged into, like, well, multiple instances of Google. So I see that constantly where I'm just like, oh, I can't open this because I'm not currently logged in, or I'm in the wrong browser. So, anyways, and then, updates, stuff like that. Software needs to get updates. And I have seen computers not function correctly because they're lacking an update for whatever reason. And, the more you work with tech, the more it's easy to understand like why this would be, but just know that it can be. So if you're lacking an update, like with Chrome, it's super easy. Google will tell you, hey, you need to update, and it'll even do a color coded thing. Like it'll say a green little thing up here saying, hey, you should probably update, or then it turns to orangish yellow, I believe, for like just like a stoplight. Green, you're good to go, but you should do it, and it's just kind of alerting you. Yellow, it's like slow down. This is starting to become more serious. And then red, it's like, hey, there might even be like a known security vulnerability. You need to update now. And rather than just like forcing you to update, they still let you choose when to update. And I don't know. To be honest, I wish I understood that a little more. I tell people to explicitly update. I mean, you could say manually update. I'm trying to get away from using that word. Like, I mean, it is what we've been using for a long time, and it's how I learned to say things like the man pages in Linux, so the manual. But yeah, manual versus automatic shifting. Well, I'm digressing a bit, but the explicit way. So explicit meaning that you are actually taking the time to force an update or initiate an update. Like you're not waiting on it to do an auto update. So, anyways, yeah, and I've seen that affect things. Very strange behavior too. Like certain pieces of something will stop functioning, and then there's Windows updates and Google updates. And I'm sure I'm not a big Mac user, but I'm sure they have their own update system. Linux has an update system. And they're more explicit too. You have to request every update with Linux. So if you're planning on doing anything with that, just be ready to do. I think it's like sudo apt-get upgrade. And then it depends on your flavor of Linux too. Like that's just the one that I'm most familiar with, and I couldn't even tell you. I want to say Ubuntu or Red Hat, Fedora, like those are the main ones. Anyways, that you're really getting into the weeds there, but Linux basically just be ready to update, and then you need to check with your version of Linux to see what commands you use to update. So, in fact, there's very handy things, and when doing anything, I should say, um, actually, let's put it up there. So, do a search for which commands to update. Well, okay, so already like I'm not liking that because that's getting big, but um, well, let's see, Linux to update. There you go. I mean, that's kind of getting really too, and I want to keep these things like short. And so, like the point why I got so excited about Jamboards is because see, like like already I'm running out of room, and these aren't. I think you can combine them. I haven't really been doing a lot of this yet, but I mean, then you can like go over here. So this is good to kind of demo to see like how you do these things. Okay, then that. Oh no, it disappeared. Well, you can change the order, send it to back. And then I mean you still have to move them separately, but at least there you go, and it's still way smoother than anything else. Like I was trying to do this on Google Docs and like insert text boxes and shapes, and while you can do it, it's not as easy as this. And so this just makes it super easy to lay it out. Anyways, let's keep going. So is there an order of operations synchronization issue? So this is also, in fact, I want to put something in here, a deadlock. That was explained to me by one of my professors, and it's where the computer system stops working, or the bug or the problem is the system is waiting on a response that's out of sync, or like the response isn't going to send because it's still waiting on the question. So you get into like a little bit of Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy there, like which came first, the question of the meaning of life, or the answer is um, 42. But then it's like, well, then they forget the question. Anyways, a long rabbit hole there. But deadlock is where the computer system sends a question, and the receiver of that question might not have gotten it in time before it sent its response. And so maybe it sent its response or something. Somehow those get out of order, and the response gets lost. And so then they'll potentially wait till the end of time. Well, luckily, a lot of software engineers nowadays they code for that. So they code, like they put in a wait timer, and that's actually getting more and more common to where if it doesn't get it, it'll just refresh or it'll just resend the request. So, and also that's kind of a way, don't want to dive too much into that, but that is a form of attack too, to manipulate TCP connections and force it to like constantly be waiting for a request. Yeah, so it can tie up systems and cause a problem. But this can also refer to other things. Like, were you supposed to do something else before you did this part? Like, um, a good example would be if you're trying to format a document with a certain document for your company or your project or whatever. And how did you do that? So you do a lot of work on a project and then you try to change the theme later. There you go. So that could cause an issue of you having to copy and paste all of that work that you just did over to a new theme. Like changing the theme of something might not be as dynamic as you think, or might not be as easy to do as you think. So there's that. And then and there's other things I can't really think of like off the top of my head, but the order in which you do things matters. Or another one. So if you click save or don't click save before navigating away from a site, you might get kicked out. And even if you like, just for a second, I've noticed some websites do this. Like if you go out of the web page, it might make you start over. And so that's something that, usually it only has to happen like once or twice. And like if, especially if it's on something like a giant form that you're filling out, and then you're like, oh, I didn't hit save before I navigated away. And so, unfortunately, like both software engineers and web developers are realizing this too, and they're trying to be more and more like patient with it. But again, it is a safety issue if you just leave things hanging. If you leave your browser open too long, all too many things open, like if someone gains access to that, like say cookie hijacking or something like that, then they can manipulate that. So it is a safety thing. Why? And it's all constantly a trade-off too. Like how secure do we want to make something, or how patient with the users do we want to be? Because you also have to account for not every user is going to be tech savvy to the point where you can trust them with certain tactics. I mean, that's being very vague, but that's intentional. Like, there's a wide range of things that software engineers and web developers can do to both help and to hinder when it comes to systems. And the hinder part is to hinder an attacker or someone trying to misuse the system, whereas the help, obviously. Anyways, so back to this stuff. Oh, and then the correct software and the correct login. So, say you have multiple logins, especially when you get into IT, because IT usually separates out the admin accounts from the basic everyday accounts. And anyone who has admin access really should have a separate login for the admin access and then a regular login for just day to day stuff. Um, so you might not be logged in the correct uh, username, and if it's not the correct software, or maybe even the incorrect instance of the software. So this is getting more into like, are you working in your sandbox development environment, or are you working in production? And by that, it's production refers to what is currently serving the company, what is live, what people can access in a lot of situations. Like, like a website, like a public facing website would be the production website. Whereas if you're developing changes to it, you might have a sandbox or a test version that's you can get to differently. Um, and I have run into that a lot of with web development. I'll be working on a web page and then I'll forget to save it, or I'll try to open it again on another computer, another terminal. Still forgot to save it, but then open another one, realize, oh, none of my changes were here. Or yeah, so having multiple instances open, you gotta look out for that. Let's see, is there? Oh, then you can see all my is there a duplicate resource file issue? So this is kind of like what I was just talking about, and I've done that a lot in web development, where I will have multiple sources of the file too. Like back when I was in school, I'd have some stored on my school account and some stored on my personal accounts, and depending on where I was working, up until I got comfortable with SSHing into the campus, and that's usually not until like your third or fourth year. Well, no, I say that, but the real go-getters, sorry, not me, you can tell, got it down freshman, sophomore year. But I wasn't really all that eager to start working from home right away. Like I enjoyed being on campus. I enjoyed being there in case I had questions. I could, maybe chat with the people next to me, or they had TAs in the lab. So, when I was first learning, I was like, I'd kind of like to have a little hand holding going on. So, anyways, version control is another way to refer to that. And a lot of programs do have version control, including Google tools like Google Docs, Google Sheets. You can click different versions. In fact, this one, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the menus on this. It doesn't look like there's as many. Oops. Yeah. See, then I just went home. Let's go back to there. But yeah, because Docs and Sheets have like a whole menu of stuff you can do. You can save copies. You can, um, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, the version control. Yeah. And then you can even tell which version you want, or you can navigate to different versions. So, um, say you're collaborating with someone and they changed something on a Google Docs or sheet that you didn't like and you want to go back. So then you can click the version control area and just go back. So, All right. If you're like a manager of it, and that's where you get into like permissions and stuff. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, is I probably would only make people viewers of all this stuff. Maybe do some collab Jamboards once we get down the ways, or maybe like I don't know, like you got to kind of control it somehow because you never, well, unless you have version control, and this might actually have version control. Let's see. I mean, you can always save stuff too. Version history. There you go. Never mind. Version history. Yep. Oh, so yeah, you got my first and last name. That's all right. So, okay, now go away. All right, get out of here. I'm clicking. Okay, so there you go. So now you know. We're kind of learning this together. But you got version history. You can see all the different versions. And yeah. Then you click the back arrow to back out of it. And I have noticed this with Google, like especially with Gmail, you have the inner back arrow and then you have the actual browser back arrow. And even though it's still Chrome and then Gmail in it, like I usually try to do the inner one as much as I can in Gmail so I'm not like refreshing the page and sending a whole new web request to the servers. Whereas if you're just navigating in there, you're only requesting the changes. And I don't know. That'll make more sense the more you get into tech, but for now, let's also look at the physical stuff. So, when doing IT, there we have, is it plugged in? Is there a battery? And I say that because if it has a battery, this is where almost an engineering data flow or project flow would be good. But so yeah, does it have power? Because that's one of the biggest things as far as a physical problem, and that's one of the first things that an IT technician will ask you is be like, is it plugged in or does it have power? And if it has power, does it have enough power? Because that's another thing people don't realize is when a computer battery starts getting low, certain programs will stop functioning. In fact, there's even ways that you can toggle what you allow. And I know this is the same for smartphones too. Is like you can toggle what processes and programs you'll allow when you're on low battery mode. And actually, smartphones kind of do their own thing anyway. As soon as it gets to low battery, it goes into low battery mode, and you won't be able to use certain programs. Maybe the flashlight doesn't work, or I mean, honestly, because I think the flashlight, I want to say it takes a lot of power, but that's just because how bright it is. I'm not basing anything or that on anything other than it's just really bright. So, which isn't a good indicator. Anyways, but batteries, are the batteries dead? Are they incorrectly? That is another thing. So they could have the negative to the positive or vice versa, and you would never know. In fact, I had a friend who her car died, and the negative and positive terminals were actually switched, like the cap on top of them. So whoever installed the battery before that had it correctly set up. But then as soon as we tried to jump it, we actually killed the battery because we jumped it incorrectly because we took the clips off, and then thinking what you put the new or wait, no, sorry, how would that work? So just the caps were switched. And I don't know if that was someone like pulling a prank on her or and actually that I've kind of wondered about that. Like if someone is like and when a prank goes way too far, because that did kill her battery. And then it was the AAA guy found out, oh, these things were on the wrong way. And so it's like a little thing like that. And that could be considered in a roundabout way cybercrime because part of cybersecurity, the red teaming of how you're defending against is the physical aspect. It's not just it's anything that people can abuse to get into your system. So by basically manipulating a car, you're manipulating the system of the car by changing the battery terminal things, therefore rendering the battery useless and disabling the car as a system. So yeah, you could even stretch that and put that under that umbrella. Of course, the person could be doing it to gain access elsewhere. So if it slows you down and say you're a security guard or something, or sorry, a security professional, anyways, if there's a reason to killing your car battery, that could still be linked to someone trying to get into a system. So I digress. For your majority of IT stuff, you just got to make sure it's plugged in, or if it has a battery, the batteries are good and also corroded. Be careful if you like open up the battery like compartment and you start seeing like kind of like this white powdery stuff or like even like a greenish tint. I feel like I've only seen like white. It almost looks like a little bit of coral or like like cheese curds, but it doesn't smell all horrible or something. Anyways, if you start seeing anything weird like that around the battery, then you got to get those batteries out, maybe wipe it down a little bit. And I honestly don't know how hazardous corrosion is. I know it's not good. And my favorite video game series, Borderlands, corrosion is one of the elemental weapons that like melts people. So yeah, it's, I digress. Also, big time gamer. Maybe I'll edit that out. Whatever. Um, so back to this. Check all of the plugs. So, and another thing with physical, especially when you're dealing with displays, the plug is important. So, if you're trying to deploy a computer, hook up a computer that requires a monitor, it's not like a laptop, or even if you have a laptop and you're trying to connect a second monitor, you need to be aware of what type of plug it is. Whether it's VGA. Oh, whoops! I was trying to highlight it. Yeah. So it's VGA, which is the blue, and that goes through analog. So, and then the rest of these are digital, which is digital video input, the DVI, which is the white one, which looks a lot like the blue plug. It's just bigger and there's a lot more prongs for it. But that's actually where we went to digital. And then HDMI is what most people are familiar with, which is actually a trapezoidal shape, kind of with like rounded edges, but still, you imagine like these are rounded edges here on these things. But anyways, yeah, HDMI, it's like high definition something input. I don't know, but that's one of the main ones. And then DPI, which is display port. This one looks like a half of a trapezoid, kind of like it has one side that's a rectangle, and then the other side it's like curved and sloped. And I believe that's usually mostly Mac. I mean, I have seen a lot of them when I was at a larger company, but that's not really an indicator of anything. And then the other companies I've worked at have been mostly not Mac, but Windows. And so I'm definitely more familiar with VGA, DVI, and HDMI. Am I missing anything? Probably. But DPI is not as common. Um, yeah, but that's important. Or if all the plugs are in. So that's another one. We can actually add that right down. Like, are all the plugs securely secure? There you go. Are all the plugs secure? I'm gonna say like securely fastened, but that's kind of getting wordy. Like, no, they're just secure. So then you gotta change it back to this rounded shape. Do one of these things. Send it to the back. And you can layer tons of stuff. I mean, just having that functionality of like moving forward. Whoops. Let's see. Send backward or send to the back or bring forward or bring to the front. You can layer a lot of stuff. You can get pretty in depth with it. And then really, I'm trying to think. And then, is it the correct hardware? So just like the software, it might not be the correct version or the correct actual software altogether. Same with the hardware. Like if you, and I've had problems with this just in my personal stuff. Okay, whoops. Oh, we can make this work. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. These are, oh wait, I can't do that because that's where my little screen sharing thing is. All right, there we go. So it could be like an incompatible piece of hardware, and that's especially true when you're trying to install a new video game on your home system. You can learn really quick that if you got a cheapo computer from, say, department store, Walmart, Target, or something, it might not be good enough or strong enough to run your games, and which is a really sad day because, like, games these days are so intense and they require so much, but at the same time, computers are capable of so much. But most of the computers that you get for a discount aren't. So if that makes sense, like they're more word processors, web browsers. They don't really have the functionality to be a gaming computer unless you spend quite a bit of money to get specific hardware for that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and a lot of people too. They'll go to Walmart, they'll get a laptop, especially going into college and stuff. Like, oh, I need to take notes. I need to do this. And, especially from a parent's perspective, it's like, you don't need to be doing all of that gaming and stuff. Like, yeah, that's nice, but, maybe send them with a PlayStation or something. Or I don't know. And that's another thing of like segmenting. That's more of a cybersecurity thing, segmenting your tech to where if one goes down, you're not completely sunk. So, and that's as someone who plays a lot of video games. I actually have, multiple systems now. So if the Switch goes down, I've got the PlayStation or vice versa. Or, I'll probably even get an Xbox one day because I used to play Xbox back in the day. But anyways, the computer though, I've always seen it as more work. Even though I have played games on computers, it's more if my computer goes down because of some malware from some game, and it's so much easier when you're using it for games to get malware because transmitting files. I don't know, and that's kind of hard to make a blanket statement because games in general, yeah, it's hard to say where malware can come from. Anyways, back to this. So that's basically IT in a nutshell. Um, it is a very basic thing, and I've just started making these. I'm going to get into like making these better and adding every last thing, and even making specifics like for certain, Windows or Linux, or there you could get very granular, or Microsoft Office versus Google Docs or whatever, and just the different errors and stuff that you can get. Basically, Google search, Google foo. Actually, let's put that in the corner of both of them because it is Google foo. That refers to just being able to do a Google search. Is it okay? And I say that, and people think, "Oh yeah, no, I can search. I can use Google." Let's actually put that on hardware as well, because you need to have it for both. Google foo. Put it down. Get that. See, super easy. Just doing this in a matter of a few clicks, making it look nice, or I'll even arrange it more. Ah, and maybe get some water when I make the next recording. But yeah, so Google foo, how to effectively search. And that means using the least amount of words possible to find what you're looking for. Because otherwise, if you have extra words in there, they could bring up irrelevant searches that'll just waste your time or distract you from the search that you're trying to do. Of course, first thing I do is zero in, only use like one or two words if I can, like the word of the software or the hardware, whatever's having an issue, and then what's happening. Like try to speak like a caveman or a cave person. So even that, it's like, anyways, sorry, I digress. But when you're doing a Google search, you want to do the least amount of terms possible and then expand your search. If you don't find it in the first one, then maybe add another term or two, and only try to do like a little bit. Like if you don't get frustrated and just start typing in a whole sentence and then trying to find only exactly a website that answers that exact question, because even though AI and ChatGPT, they're getting better and they're being incorporated into search engines, they still might not find what you're looking for. And so I don't know. It's a trade-off too, because you could actually type a whole sentence and try to try your luck and see if you get the exact document that fixes your exact problem. Actually, even as I say that, if you have an error message, search the error message. Like that is, let's go back to software. If you have an error message, is there an error message? Google that message. The whole message. In fact, Google the whole message. Because, yeah, especially now, you are not the first person. The chances of you being the first person to experience a bug in this day and age are very slim, but they could happen. I should say that. But there's so many people out there using, so many different types of software that chances are, if there's an error message tied to it, someone else has had that, done something. And so you might find a Stack Overflow or a Reddit or some kind of forum where this problem was already well documented, how to fix it and what to look out for too. So you might even learn some other things, or if you're having an error that actually has other errors tied to it, then it's helpful because then you can be like, oh, now I also need to go fix this, this, and this. The only example I can think of for that is a security thing. Like if you find out there's a new vulnerability and you need to update to this version of the software, that's like a big thing. And that could affect multiple things. Or like this vulnerability could require these upgrades or these updates. But really, anytime you get an error message, especially if you're learning how to program. You're learning Java or C++ or whatever. Maybe. Well, sorry, I say that, but C++ doesn't really have great errors. It's like segmentation fault, and then it'll still tell you about where it crashed. I mean, well, exactly where, what line it had the segmentation fault at, and that'll help you. It doesn't necessarily, yeah. In fact, that gets more into software. So this is just for IT, but I will do another one for software, even though I was just, briefly a software developer. I do know a little bit about that. So let's see. And then, well, yeah, and then problem solving in general. This is another good one. So, yeah, problem solving, yeah, in general. This is the basic one. So, and I rant about this a lot in my musings. You got the two taboos, religion and politics, which actually we have those. So, politics, religion. All right. And then back to this one, scalability. So if you're trying to solve a problem, can you solve it in a way that